Is there a delay?
Slight. If there is, it's not so we can edit out 4-letter words, Mike. So
Yeah.
All set, Tom.
Liam, do I X out of YouTube?
Yeah, we're live. We're good.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent. The only one I don't see is Jean Marie so far. Let's just give her another minute. Hi, Richard.
Hi there.
Hi, Allison.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. Happy New
Good.
Year.
I'm sorry about your dog.
Oh, thank you. What do you think, Betsy? Shall we get started? Jean Marie, she's a quick study. She'll catch up.
Yeah, but I'm surprised she hasn't texted
Yeah.
or something, but
Yeah, me too.
yeah, she'll be along any minute, I'm sure.
Yep. Well, we're certainly mindful of your time and appreciate your volunteering for service. And so to that end, we'd like to be prompt with our meetings and be efficient with our time together. I'd like to start, if I could, introducing myself. I'm Tom Hall, the town manager. We also have with us Liam Gallagher, who's my assistant manager, and Tody Justice, whom I suspect many of you have met, is our town clerk. And among other things, really the town historian when it comes to these sorts of matters. I'm sure she'll relate as we go forward how many charter reviews she's actually partaken in, and will be an invaluable resource, I think, to you as you go forward. With us as well, we do have Councillor Gleistein, Betsy Gleistein, and Jean Marie Caterina is the second councillor who will be joining us, I'm sure. We all, staff and council, don't have any vote in your proceedings, but we're here to help support you and perhaps provide insight and comment to the extent that you wish, you invite that. So I'll say this out loud really for my own benefit, but perhaps for the others that, we live this every day. And so we do have some opinions, but it's really, this is your time. And the council is very interested in assembling a group of interested town residents to do a thorough review of the charter and make recommendations as it sees fit. And again, we'll serve as resources. I think it might be helpful for you to appreciate how we got to this point. The charter itself has kind of a self-timer. Section 1008 in Article 10 actually does require that every 10 years the town council appoint a review committee for the express purpose of reviewing the charter and making recommendations for its change. Be mindful that any changes must be approved by voters. And so there's a process, and I'm sure we'll get into that in better detail. We had nearly 30 applicants for this position, for this committee, which was just terrific. We often have difficulty finding residents to serve in one capacity or another. This one must have resonated, and I must commend you all. The council went through a thorough and very deliberative process, and I think was very thoughtful in making their appointments. So very austere group, and again, very appreciative for you giving your time and service to the community. Quickly by way of background, and we can provide more detail to the extent you think it's helpful, but kind of the backdrop to this, the town of Scarborough changed its form of government to a council manager form, the one we have now, in 1969, and exercised its home rule authority by adopting its first local charter. And essentially, to simplify things, it's kind of our local constitution. It allows us to make decisions for ourselves, if you will, and otherwise we defer back to state law and certainly federal law as it may apply. And then through the course of time, this document has changed. In the 70s, there were 3 different revisions. In the 80s, there were 2 revisions. The 90s, there was 1. And then in the 2000s, we've done it 4 times, actually. The most recent substantive revision was done in 2010. I see Annalee Rosenblatt here. Annalee was on that review committee. And there were some very substantive things that came forward and exist in the charter today. So that's
And the
kind
one
of
before that too, Tom.
yeah.
I've been on 2 previous ones, so
Oh, is that right? Thank you.
I'm with Tody on the history.
Thank you for reminding me. And undoubtedly, your background and history with this puts you back here again, and you must be a glutton for punishment. That's all I've got to say. And I think the other thing that's worth noting here, the council has given you a fairly tight timeline to work on. I think part of that is to encourage and provide some motivation. The last one took almost 2 years start to finish, which was just too long, frankly.
2 years? It took us that long.
The committee was decided to be formed in January of 2009, and it didn't go to the voters till November 2010 and effective January, the following January. And I don't blame the committee per se. I think we had trouble just getting things started. So we'll get into the details of kind of timeline expectation, but I think the council's interested in providing some motivation for you to do your work, but doesn't want to rush you at the same time. So with that, what I thought would be helpful is perhaps for us to go right through and have you introduce yourselves and share some details, perhaps where you live, how long you've been resident, what draws you to this type of service might be helpful. We will be considering election of officers, so to the extent that you want to share any detail that might influence your committee members in that regard is certainly appropriate as well. So I'm going to work with how you appear on my screen. I'm going to start with Mike Stevenson. Mike, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Mike Stevenson. A Scarborough resident since 2010 when I bought a small business here. We sell business telephone systems, and we're located at Oak Hill, behind McDonald's, just off Route 1. I'm also an 8-year member of the Scarborough Fire Department, a call company member at Engine 5, which is North Scarborough, which is very close to where I live. I have been involved in some committees in a couple of different areas. We have a North Scarborough Fire Company, which is a private incorporated business that operates independently from the fire department themselves. And I was on the board of that for 3 years. Also board member and past president of Buy Local Scarborough, which is where I got to meet, I think, Anna Lee. The first time we met was at probably a Buy Local, and I met Jean Marie Caterina there also. I don't have any experience whatsoever of local government structure and governance, and I pulled that out of the brief that we have for the Charter Review Committee. But I've had opinions all my life about things and vowed that if I sat back and didn't get involved in change, then I couldn't complain afterwards that it didn't go in the direction that I wanted to go in. So I did look at some possible changes to the charter a few years ago, and very much drew a blank on that, and decided when this opportunity came around, I wanted to grasp it with both hands and get involved in that process. So I'm thrilled and honored to be part of this.
Terrific. Thank you, Mike. Next, I have Mary Starr. And Mary, you're muted. And while you unmute, I'll just say following Mary would be Mike Wood, Nick McGee, and Alan Foster, just so you won't be surprised.
Thank you. So I'm Mary Starr. I have lived in Scarborough. It'll be 20 years in June, which is crazy to say. I can't quite believe it's been that long. I have been on the school board for a couple of years, and then as well, I worked quite a bit with the school supporters. That was something that I was very passionate about as far as community work, and I was a volunteer in the schools for many, many years. Currently, I actually work for the city of Saco And I do a lot of work with policy and a little bit of HR. I kind of do a little bit of everything. I'm also a volunteer coordinator there, and I'm also the deputy registrar. So I do have quite a bit of experience within government, and this was something that I was very interested in because I do, it's crazy to say, but I love policy. I was on the policy committee as well and chair when I was on the board. And it's something that I was just very interested in being a part of. And I just look forward to, making a difference. I've always been very passionate about helping the community, and this is just another way to continue doing that.
Thank you, Mary. Mary, your signal is really challenging. Your audio is hard to get, and your video clearly is a little choppy. So I wonder if maybe someone at GWI that can help you get some better service there. No, sometimes if you turn video off and focus just on audio, that can help. But I just want to make that observation. All right, thank you. Mike Wood?
Hey, am I unmuted? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Wood. Let's see, I've been in Scarborough cumulatively probably about 32 or so years. Moved here in '86 and then moved away and then back in '92. 3 daughters, all graduated from Scarborough schools, and live here in, I don't know if you call it North Scarborough. We used to call it the poor side of Route 1, but maybe not anymore. Got involved in town politics and committees probably in the late 90s, beginning with a couple committees and then the planning board. Planning board for about 9 years, termed out there, chairmanship, a lot of subcommittees related to that, long range planning, et cetera. Ran for council twice, got elected twice, chairman for a year or so. I've been on both sides of the issues, some controversial, some not so. Love being involved in the town, haven't been in the last several years. I retired back in 2012, went overseas, did some air traffic control for Iraq, then came back, retired again. Then I went back to DC, did some FAA headquarters work, retired, and now I'm back doing FAA headquarters work again. So I like staying busy. And right now it's all remote, as you know, but really enjoy staying engaged. Love the town, obviously. Not going anywhere. We built a beautiful house in North Scarborough, and we like to think that we'll be here as long as the good Lord will allow us. My 3 girls are all grown. They like coming to grandma and grandpa's house and playing in the yard and going across the street to Springbrook Park. So anyway, really interested in getting involved again, at least at this level. And I've worked with the charter, of course, and thank you for anybody who's worked on it before. It's a good document, workable document, and I think it can probably improve itself a little bit. I know it won't take us 2 years, but looking forward to working with all of you. Thanks,
Great.
Tom.
Thanks, Mike. Nick?
Hi, thanks, Nick McGee. Been in Scarborough just a little bit over 10 years. I live out in the western portion of Scarborough, affectionately referred to as Buxton Fourside. We've got 3 children, all in the Scarborough school system. Been on the planning board for, I believe I'm going on 8 years. I'm currently the chairman of the Scarborough Planning Board. I own my own business, Summit Property Management. We do residential condominium management. So a lot of time spent working with their boards on their needs and helping manage their properties. One of my first jobs out of college was working for a municipality out in Rhode Island. And it was interesting because that was probably my first introduction to local government. And they had a town administrator form of government, which is basically what you see here, except for their town administrator goes through an election process. basically a mayor, an elected mayor, but not called such. So it was kind of an interesting dynamic because you did have an elected council and an elected mayor, so to speak. And to see that dynamic was kind of interesting. I'm not sure I'd ever recommend that type of form of government because that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So, but it was a nice first delve into local politics. I've always loved politics, kind of been around it for a while, and I think that's what kind of piqued my interest here, which is seeing how we operate and where does the future take us, based on what the town needs are. So I'm looking forward to this experience.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Alan.
Hi, how's everybody tonight? I'm just glad to be here. I have to tell you, Tom, that years ago I studied public administration. So if you're ever getting ready to retire, I'll be willing to step in and take your place. In all seriousness.
Some days, Alan, you can have it.
I'm just kidding. I don't. Anyway, I'm Alan Foster. I live in the Downs. So I invite all of you to come over and see what's happening in the Downs. We're going to be the center of Scarborough eventually down the road. I'm a relatively new resident to Scarborough, just about a year. I moved in with my girlfriend back in March, having previously lived in Kennebunk. And we used to kid each other which town was better, Kennebunk or Scarborough. So I guess I've kind of fallen in love with Scarborough. My background is varied. I've spent 20 years in the U.S. Navy, retired back in 1999, if you can believe it or not. Been in the private sector, public sector as a registrar at a community college. Of course, oceanography and weather in the Navy, worked for a private company. My most recent employment was with Habitat for Humanity at the Restore in Kennebunk in York County. I've always thought it was a responsibility as a citizen to get involved, and I've been trying to find ways to get involved. So when this opportunity presented itself, I applied for both positions that were open, the one for the planning board, I guess, and this one. And I was glad to do this because I've been used to doing writing evaluations, looking at documents, rewriting things. So I am poised and ready to go. I'm semi-retired and I have time to give to this. And I'm just glad to see everybody here and hope that we can get things accomplished as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you, Alan. Tody, you want to introduce yourself, please?
I am Tody. I'm the clerk here. I've been with Scarborough just over almost 26 years, 30 all told, because I spent 4 years with the school department prior to coming to the other side. I believe we got a great group of individuals here, and we can accomplish what we need to in the short period of time that the council has assigned us. So, and I'm here to answer any questions and assist in the process.
Terrific. Liam?
Yeah, Liam Gallagher. I'm the fairly recently promoted assistant town manager and director of human resources. I've been working in local government for about a decade now, again, primarily in HR, and looking forward to seeing what the committee's work's going to yield. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Liam. And Liam is my crutch for the Zoom meeting, so I have him co-host. I'll get the training wheels off soon, I promise. Anna Lee, please introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name's Annalie Rosenblatt, and I live in Old Millbrook. We moved here in August of 1981, so maybe the senior person in many ways for this group. So my two children went through the Scarborough schools, one through the special ed program from the beginning, so I got to experience both sides of the house, so to speak. I've been on school board. I've chaired school board for a term, and was on the policy and negotiations and personnel committee. I've met Liam through a professional organization that hasn't done much lately because of our situation, but we haven't seen each other for a while, but I know him from there. And Mike, I was vice chair of the Charter Review Commission when he was on the council, I believe. And interestingly enough, Mike, the chair of that committee, also is in the same business that you're in. I don't know if he's still in town or not, but he chaired the committee way back 20 some years ago.
He's in Florida.
Oh, is he? Well, good for him. That's every day I think I should be there. And then last time, so the second time I was on the Charter Commission, I was chair of the Charter Commission. And here I am again. I'm self-employed, been self-employed ever since I've lived in Scarborough and before. I do human resources like Liam does, and labor negotiations for management for small municipalities. So I've worked for government as a consultant, never as an employee, for 40 some years now. Chaired the State Civil Service Board for 15 years, making decisions about people's pay and their future with the state of Maine. I chaired the Scarborough 350th Committee, which was maybe a 3 or 4 year project. Started out as treasurer, and then I saw Leanne's, I read Leanne's note. She sent in a note. And then moved to chair of that committee. It was like 3 years long, that process. So some people changed over. So I've been really active. I've run for council and never served, and I ran for legislature. So I've been really involved civically for a long time, involved in the schools as in the special ed teacher, parent teacher group, the hockey boosters, where we even played bingo on Thanksgiving Day, as I remember back. It's been a long and wonderful experience giving to Scarborough. I look forward to this experience, and I'm so glad to see the timeline so much shorter than it was before, Tom. This is a big improvement to have a goal.
Very good. Thank you, Annalee. Karen.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Karen Shoup. I've been a resident of Scarborough for 15 years now. I live on Pine Point Road to the extent where I can hear Ken's, intercom from my backyard. I'm a paralegal, and I also studied poli-sci in college, just kind of really into local government, really been interested in it. I've served on the zoning board for the last 6 years. I was the chair the last 2 years. And I think it was a really good experience, a little bit different than probably a committee like this, but I'm hoping I can add some sort of value and perspective that's different. I have 2 young kids in the Scarborough school system. I am a single parent, so I do have very limited availability. I'm hoping our meetings will not be on Tuesdays moving forward.
Me too.
Yeah, I just want to say that, but I'm flattered to be on this committee. I'm really proud of the work we've done on the zoning board. I liked the work that we did and the stuff that we did for the residents. And we did a little bit of trying to work with the zoning ordinances to make them more amenable to residents. I'm excited to see what this is really all about, and hopefully I can add some sort of value.
Terrific. Thank you, Karen. Richard.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Rich Silkman. We live down on Pine Point in Scarborough. We've lived here probably now about 10 years. Bought the house 20 years ago and did a little bit of remodeling on it to make it a more livable place. And we're thrilled to be down here. In wintertime, it's pretty empty, but it's nice to have the crowds in the summertime. We lived in Yarmouth prior to then for about 30 years and until we moved down here. They have a varied background. Ran the Muskie Institute for a number of years before it was named the Muskie Institute, when it was still a graduate program in public policy at USM, and then served as the director of the planning office under Jock McKernan when he was elected governor back in 1986. Did that for a few years, but have spent most of my career in energy economics, doing consulting work for companies around the country and setting up a company in Portland called Competitive Energy Services, and we provide energy assistance to lots of entities in Maine, New England, and actually around the country in terms of how they buy, procure, and utilize energy, including working with green power, environmental attributes, those kinds of things. In fact, we've been doing some work with Scarborough, the school district and the town in Scarborough for a few years. So just happy to be on the committee and got a few ideas. I've read through the charter. It's a well-drafted document, and just a couple of things that I would like to make some recommendations on. We'll get to those as the time arises. Thank you all very much.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Allison.
Hello, everybody. I'm Allison Bristol. I live at Higgins Beach, and I've been in Scarborough. Well, I came to Scarborough, I should say, almost by accident. It's kind of destiny, if it were. My grandmother lived in Colebrook, New Hampshire, and she ran a boarding house, and her last boarder lived with her was a high school principal and lived at her house for 40 years. And he had a cottage at Higgins Beach, and he was extended family, and God bless him, when he passed away in 2009, he left me his cottage by the sea, which it's been unbelievable to be here. And Scarborough is a great town, and I love being here. So my background is that previous to Scarborough, I lived in Boston. I retired from the Boston Symphony Orchestra as the director of corporate sponsorships and corporate annual funds. And previous to that, my background is music, theater, and large scale events. I don't really have any experience working in local government, although I've gotten involved in pay attention to the government, find it very interesting listening to the council meetings and the various committee meetings. And I've served now in my second year on the Higgins Beach Association Civic Committee. And I'm very honored to be appointed to this committee and look forward to working with everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councillor Gleistein.
Yeah, my name is Betsy Gleistein. I've been in Scarborough since about 1996, and I was elected to serve on the town council in 2019. Really appreciate everybody who was interested in serving on this committee. It sounds like we have a really diverse background of folks. I think, it's amazing and a thing of beauty to go through. I think the town charter and the logic, I think, will start coming out to you. If you come from a different part of the country, maybe you're not familiar with how New England runs, but we have strong local government, even to the point of what we call home rule, and we have limited county government. And under that home rule, we really get to set a lot of ways for how we run our own town within state law, and the charter is the way that we start that process. There's a lot of other things that we do as well. I would really encourage people to talk to your neighbors and friends as we go through this process. I think, for all the negatives of COVID, one thing that's kind of nice is it's easier to record some of these committees than it had been before using new technology tools. They can watch on YouTube, they can phone in, we'll try to, if you look, we always have a phone number too, or they can call Toady and find out, if your friends and neighbors really don't do Zoom or computers, they actually can listen in on the phone. And of course, everything will be posted for people to watch after, because once this goes to council, and, I think, I don't want people to feel super rushed. I mean, we did set a time frame, but we also weren't able to meet as soon as we had wanted to. And so I think, this group can come back, if you do need a little bit more time, and we'll see how that goes. But, once this gets to council and we look at putting it on the referendum for the vote, because the citizens often choose, a lot of times at that point, it gets quite a bit of attention. And as you will find out, a lot of the work will have been done by this committee at that point. So, it behooves all of us to get as many people to listen in, give us input, even if there's something somebody else wants taken forward that maybe you support or you don't support, but to give voice to your neighbors' concerns, your neighbors' ideas and input. during this process. I would highly encourage people to do that. And I, as a hobby, for reasons, who knows why, I read town budgets, town policies, and town charters as a hobby. So I think I would highly recommend reading other Maine town charters and even Massachusetts ones, since a lot of ways we're kind of modeled on the Massachusetts form of government from way back. So anyway, or New Hampshire, or any of the smaller New England states. So welcome and thank you. And I look forward to this process.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Katarina.
Sorry, I'm late. I had us down at 7. That just shows how crazy my life is in the last week or two here. Jean Marie Katarina, first elected to the council in 2013. I was not on the council 2017. Very happy to have been voted back onto the council and to work on the charter. The charter, as you all know, is central to the operation of us as a corporation, so to speak, in Maine. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. I know I have a couple of thoughts on some things I think can be tweaked in the charter. So that's all I have to say tonight. Thanks.
Terrific. Thanks for sharing. And last but certainly not least, Leanne Castiglionis.
Hi there. I also apologize. I had it in the calendar as 7 o'clock and I am so sorry. I've been in Scarborough almost 19 years, which is a little frightening to think about because I really think I'm still 19. But I am a liaison from the school board, really excited to be looking at the charter. I think, like many folks have already said, there are a few things that we'd love to tweak, really look at, and I'm kind of excited to work on the foundation of our government in Scarborough. So this should be a great committee to be part of.
Sorry about that. I had a little coughing fit. So I should have mentioned at the outset, I've kind of volunteered myself to serve as facilitator through this next step. And then ideally we'd have a chair elected and they'll take over the reins. So we are at that meeting. I guess there's a couple of ways we could do this. We could do it the easy way or the hard way. And I prefer to try the easy way first. I guess what I would simply ask is there anyone on the committee of the 9 appointed members that's willing to serve as chair? Before anyone, you all raise your hands. Let me describe what at least my expectation of those responsibilities. Certainly staff, Tony and I expect to be at every meeting. I think Liam will probably pop in and out. We have the town attorney that can come in as needed as well. So we'll do all the support, kind of arranging for the meetings, publishing the agendas, so on and so forth. So we're really looking for someone to run the group during the meetings, during session. And then I expect there will be recommendations that come out of the process. And so there'll be some report out, presumably, to the council. And typically the chair would take on that responsibility, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm trying to sell this to a volunteer that certainly attendance is required, but it's really running the in-session meeting, if you will, is what I expect the responsibilities of the chair will be. And certainly organizing votes to the extent that you need them as your process unfolds. So with that, anyone willing to throw their hat in the ring? I see Nick raising his hand, Nick McGee.
I have a question, Tom. Is there going to be a chair and a co-chair?
There certainly can be. The charter, the charge talks about election of officers, specifically chair and secretary, but I think if you wish to have further governance, I don't see any prohibition. The point is that you have some way to organize yourselves and conduct yourselves efficiently. Councillor Gleistine and Katarina, would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I would ask if you could maybe say what you think the role of the secretary is. So, maybe it's chair and co-chair instead of chair and secretaries. What is the role of the secretary?
Well, I think I know council really wants to be open and transparent in process and have a good, thorough record. We will be recording these meetings, but I think having a written record and approved minutes is an important part of that history. I expect Tony and myself can be very helpful to the secretary and in large part take over those responsibilities. So, that's an important function. I think staff can probably handle that if you'd rather have more, have a chair and a vice chair or co-chairs or some combination of that.
Tom, did you, and again, I'm sorry, I'm like Leanne, I thought the meeting was at 7. Did you talk about the role of the counselors and how the 2 counselors are non-voting members and we're really here more as support and
Yes.
guidance and whatever? Okay.
I did.
All right, I just wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, that we're here as resources to help answer questions, offer opinions when sought, but really to support them in their efforts. Yes.
So Tom, let me just offer historically, the first time I was on, we had a chair, vice chair, and I don't remember if we had a secretary so I don't know how those notes were. Were you, Tony? I couldn't remember who was there. And then last time we had a chair and vice chair, and Tony served as the secretary, and that worked very smoothly because she has everything at her beck and call, so to speak, to get that out. So that may be a better,
fair enough,
a chair and a vice chair. So if the chair is not able to attend, there's some coordination and somebody to step in. So that worked well.
Staff didn't want to automatically monopolize all the fun and just assume the secretarial responsibilities, but we're certainly willing to provide those if that helps support you.
Yeah, well, any minutes that are taken, people can amend them if they don't think they're right. I mean, the whole committee would participate in that minute review.
Sure.
If there is a vice chair, I would go for that. I'd defer to Nick to be the chairman. I've never chaired a committee, but I would be willing to be a vice chair if that's amenable with the other members.
I would just quickly add that I'm not opposed to the idea of a co-chair in the sense that we have a pretty consolidated timeline, which may make for frequent meetings. And I think perhaps 2 people acting as, a leadership body would be helpful, especially in a consolidated time frame situation where meetings might be frequent and not everyone may be able to attend those or chair those at the same time. So
let's try to drive down on the governance piece first, and then we can figure out how to fill those positions. So I think there's two paths. I've heard a chair and a vice chair and potentially co-chair. Let's take them in that order. Let's have discussion around the concept of a chair and a vice chair. Does anyone have further comment on that governance?
Since I brought it up, let me speak to it and then people can chime in. I think having a chair and a vice chair will require them to really work together because I think they need to help set the agenda and the pace and some of those types of things. But I think that you've got to have one person that is the go-to person that runs a meeting when you're both there. Because, do you have the senior co-chair and the junior or whatever, the lieutenant, the captain? So I think that works better. And I would advocate for that. We've done it twice that way. It worked out quite well.
Any other thoughts on that governance structure?
I would agree with Annalee. I think chair and co-chair is a vice chair rather, chair and vice chair. In essence, administratively, they're gonna work together as one. But at the end of the day, I think it's important that you have one chair. And I know Annalee said it worked well in the past. I'm sure it did, with the exception of taking 24 months.
That wasn't all the chair's fault.
I'm kidding, Annalee.
For purposes of just expanding the discussion to make sure we talk about it, anyone have thoughts about the approach of co-chairs, or is that implicit in the discussion that's already occurred?
Again, Ali made some really good points.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed that co-chair and vice chair was about the same, but I understand the difference now. It's clear.
So I suppose we could call for a formal vote on that governance structure. Betsy and Jean Marie, do you think that's necessary, that formality? Okay. So the proposal, and Annalee, I'm going to record you as making the motion to have a chair and a vice chair. Is there a second? Mike Wood?
Second.
Okay. I've got Mike recorded. Let's have any further discussion on that suggestion of having a governance structure of a chair and a vice chair.
So do you prefer raising hands or speaking out when we vote? What's easier for, if Toby's going to be taking the notes, what's easier for you, Toby? Putting hands up, okay.
I do it. I think hands up
And
instead of everybody speaking at once, but
Are
for what
we
it's worth,
under,
yeah.
are we under the state regulations on voting on, since this is a public meeting, that it's supposed to be a roll call?
I was just going to say that.
I would think
No, I think not.
I think the belt and suspenders approach would be full roll call vote. I can clarify that with looking at the executive order from the governor. Why don't we do that for this evening and we'll clarify that point going forward? Is that okay?
I
Just to
think-
make sure that there's.
And just for the purposes of that discussion, I know during the planning board discussions, when we first started moving to a Zoom meeting, I think legal counsel from the town had indicated to us that not only was a visual appropriate, but the verbal in a roll call format.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to suggest we do that in an overabundance of caution. We'll get clarification whether that's required. Frankly, I don't expect there'll be many formal votes required for first part of this, many sessions, but there'll come the point where you do need to vote formally. So if there's no further discussion, Tody, can you take the roll?
Yes. Allison Bristol? You're
You're
on mute.
muted.
Yes.
Okay. Alan Foster?
Yes.
Nick McGee?
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Karen Shoup?
Yes.
Richard Silkman?
Yes.
Mary Starr? Okay. And is it Eric or Mike Stevenson? Which would you prefer?
Mike, please.
Mike.
But yes.
Stevenson. Yep. And then Mike Wood.
Aye.
It was unanimous.
Terrific.
Thank you.
So since there are multiple folks interested, I think we'll go the formal route. At this point, I'd take nominations for the position of chair of this committee.
I'll nominate Nick.
I'm sorry, that was Mike Stevenson?
Yes.
Okay.
I second.
Are there any other nominations to come forward? All right, hearing none. Tody, would you take the roll?
Allison?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
Annalee?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Mike Stevenson?
Yes.
And Mike Wood?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I hand the responsibilities to you, sir.
Thank
I
you.
think just that what would be in order would be accept nominations for vice chair.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for entrusting me in this role. And I look forward to what is going to be very productive, very constructive meetings. So with that, open the floor to nominations for vice chair.
I'll nominate Alan Foster.
Nomination for Alan Foster. Any other nominations for vice chair?
Second.
Seeing no other nominations, I'll close nominations. We'll take a roll call vote.
Who, may I ask
Mike
who seconded?
Stevenson. I had a second from Mary Starr.
Okay, thank you.
And I, just as a technicality, I'm pretty sure, and somebody could probably argue me on this, but I'm pretty sure that in nominations, you actually don't need a second. A single nomination will do. Mike Stevenson,
Yes.
Mike Wood, Alan Foster,
Yes. Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
and Mary Starr.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Congratulations, Alan.
Thank you.
Next, we
Congratulations,
have
Mike. I mean, Nick.
we have the role of secretary.
If
We have
it-
any nominations for secretary? Nominate Annalee Rosenblatt. Any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, I'll close nominations. Mike Stevenson,
Yes.
Mike Wood, Alan Foster,
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Karen Shoup,
Yes.
Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
Mary Starr.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Congratulations, Annalee.
Thank you. So Mike, do you know that when you vote, you put it on mute and then you take it off mute when you're doing the opposite? Just to let you know.
Mike, you're kind of toggling between the two.
He just keeps going.
So, thank you. So we have our slate of officers. I think what would be appropriate for just this meeting is to kind of go over perhaps what our next steps look like. And I, for one, I don't know if the appropriate person to ask for this is maybe Tom or Tody. Historical information on changes that were made and discussed. One thing, yes, we have a charge to review what our current charter looks like, but there's also things that we can learn from discussions from the previous charter commissions that were before us. And it may save us some time if we can do a little historical reading in between these meetings on maybe some of the discussions or meeting minutes. Are those readily available to us either through the website or some form of document we can access?
They're probably not readily available, but we can certainly assemble them. I guess I would ask, how far do you want to go back? Do you want to go back to the beginning?
I think at least maybe the last two go arounds. I mean, I'm sure Annalee, we have pretty good historical
have 'em
record from
up.
her last service as chair. But I think more so I would be interested in seeing the changes that were recommended and accepted and adopted, and maybe some of the recommendations that weren't, and just to see what the discussions were around them and how they ended up ultimately arriving at their final decision whether to include it or not to include it. And like I said, I don't expect a full accounting of every discussion, but perhaps a little historical background would help frame maybe and not have us recreate so much of the work that I think previous commissions maybe had gone through.
Yeah, we're pleased to pull that together. I might suggest we can go back probably the two most recent processes. Beyond that, I think probably things get so dated that there won't be much value necessarily, but perhaps we can do that as well. Please appreciate that in both cases, there will be a set of recommendations that the committee came up with, and then the town council decided which ones to go to the voters, and then we can also tell you how the voters fared, how they fared with the voters. So there'll be kind of three components of each of those sets, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Tom, I can help you with that if there were any pieces, because I probably retained more than quote official stuff. So I don't mind working with you or Tody trying to fill in anything you can't find.
Well, I think we'll start with the official record, so to
Yes,
speak. So the official
I agree.
recommendations, the council action, and the voter approvals. And then if there are some gaps that you want to fill in, I think we could probably look at our collective notes and fill in some of those. But
I
we'll
think
start
you
there.
doing the work is fine with me.
No, Tody has all that readily available.
I believe, Annalee, was it the last one or the one before that they did a nice binder? They did a 3-ring binder, and I believe the next group did something similar to that. And
I
they
think
did a,
so it
yeah.
should all be there.
It should be, yeah, it's in the vault.
Good. Pleased to pull that together for your next meeting.
I can remember a lot of it too, so.
All right. I appreciate that. So on our next item on our agenda for this evening is established meeting date and time. And
Mike, hand up.
I think this is always going to be the challenge. What do people here find? Do they find night meetings are typically best in general?
Doesn't matter to me.
Mike?
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, Nick, I guess I just wanted to interject here. What's the protocol here to be recognized? Are you going to establish the same rules that we're used to in town council and planning board procedures?
Yeah, I think with Zoom, physically I just saw you raise your hand, but I think we have the raise my hand feature you could also use, and I think that would probably be helpful as we go through this. There are a bunch of us on the call. So either a physical hand up that I can kind of take
Oh,
note
very
of, or a panelist use the raise my hand feature, and that way we can work it that way. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, great.
So,
And,
yeah, Betsy.
Mr. Chair, I think most folks do a pretty good job at this. Encourage people to maybe, if they don't feel like you've seen their hand or something, because sometimes things go off the screen, just to say, kind of say, excuse me or something, because this isn't a council meeting, even though our meetings are not that super formal. We want to make sure we hear from everyone. So it should work to raise your hand or do the chat. And I know Tom or Liam will be monitoring that, or Tody. Yeah, I think the important thing to me is to make sure that everyone gets heard and the time that they feel like they were participating in the part of the discussion that we're having. So
Thanks, Betsy. Karen.
Yeah,
Is
I
it
think I
Karen or
mentioned-
Corinne? I want to get this right out of the gate. Is it Karen or Corinne?
It's
I'm sorry, what was that?
Karen Shoup, not Shoopy, as someone pronounced it at town council the other night. Shoup. I have very limited availability Wednesdays when it's not zoning board, and Thursdays. Otherwise, I have my kids pretty much in the evenings. So that's about what I got.
Okay. Other availability or conflicts that other members may have here?
I'll just say that the council meets Wednesdays, certainly 2 Wednesdays each month, very often a third, sometimes a fourth. So Wednesdays typically are not good dates for council members or staff. The downtown committee just started last week. They have chosen to meet on Tuesday nights. So that's just an issue for me, and I'll find a way to work around that, but I just want to make you aware of it.
And
Richard, I saw your hand up.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say I'm sorry to interrupt. The third Thursday of the month is ordinance too, so.
Richard,
And
did you have?
I'm chair of ordinance, so.
Yeah, Richard.
Daytime is a little tricky. I can, for a regularly scheduled meeting, it's going to be hard for me to do daytimes because of running the company. But, if we can vary the time during the day, I can probably make some time. So nighttimes are better, but I appreciate people with kids having difficulty.
Mike, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I would just echo the gentleman's last comment. Daytime wouldn't be possible for me. Nighttime's fine. And I respect anybody else who has I guess actually Monday through Thursday, anytime at night, 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Thanks, Mike. Annalee?
I have a side question. So the public is going to be allowed to participate with, how does that work? Can they come in on Zoom, or do they have to come in on, just talk a little bit for me, educate me a little bit, because I've only done that once with y'all.
Yeah, they
Tom,
would
you got that
join
one?
us. Yeah, they'd join as participants at the appropriate time when the chair asks for public comment. Someone would raise their hand. We would allow them to speak. We typically do not share video capabilities, but allow them to make their comment to the committee. It works quite well.
Yeah, I mean, when I did it, it was very smooth. So do you think it would be easier, Nick? Are you familiar with that software? I know the chamber board uses it, where people fill in availabilities, and then you could kind of see it on a big graph, and it just takes a short amount of time. I mean, if you sent that out, and then you can get a big picture, because with this many people, I think you're going to have a hard time keeping track of what's available for people.
Sure. Let me, I'll just so that, and Betsy, I see that, and I saw Leanne has got a hand up, and Mary, just give me a quick sec. Let me ask, let's just start here. We all made it tonight. The Tuesday nights work.
I had
Betsy,
two other things.
Betsy's like, yes, okay.
I had two other things tonight.
Okay.
And one
So-
of them is standing, and it's been a standing meeting for 5 years or so.
Okay, so what we'll do, and Leanne's been patiently waiting with her fake hand up on the side here. Go ahead, Leanne.
I was just going to say the school board meets the first and third Thursdays of the month.
That's great. Okay, Mary.
can't hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I have some flexibility. I'm pretty much like late afternoon, early evening. Let me stop my video. Hold on. Is that any better? If I
Yes,
stop
Yes.
the video?
yes.
Yes,
Could you hear me now or no?
yes.
No. Oh, you can hear me? Oh, okay, okay. I'm just
Way
saying,
better.
I can meet, most evenings, like either afternoon or early evening works fine for me.
Okay. Thank you. And then I saw one other, was it Allison? I thought I saw one more hand up in there.
No, I'm good. I'm pretty flexible.
Okay. All right. So I think Annalee's suggestion might probably work best. This is, we'll send out I can't remember the name of the app. I've used it before. I can't remember if it's like a Survey Monkey, but there's a calendar, and I know the planning department has used it for scheduling our walkarounds on site visits and things. So Tom or Tody or somebody, can you find out what it is they're using? And the planning department definitely used it.
Yeah, I think it's probably Doodle Poll.
Yes, thank you. That's what it is.
So this one would be simply looking at which days of the week work for folks generically, without specific dates per se.
I think we probably should look at our full month's calendar and we'll go through 1 month's worth of calendars and everyone select a date that they're available, and we'll see where they line up.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, Jean Marie.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was just unofficially tagging different days. Are people available the second and fourth Thursdays of the month? Because I didn't hear of anybody saying they couldn't do then.
I was just appointed to the Community Services Board. I don't know when they meet, but.
We'll change their meeting, Sharon.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I do think that, it may be impossible to get everyone, and we do have to be mindful of the standing committees like Town Council and BOE. We try, it's not always possible, but we really try not to overlap with those because people have, interest in watching and attending those. So I think that's a great suggestion, Jean Marie. If that works for everyone, we may need to meet, depending on what our time frame turns out to be, to save both those, the second and the fourth. So I think if that works for everyone, that's a lot easier than doing doodle. And I think honestly, the standing meetings, when we all know what day and time it is and we can stick it in our calendars now, works a lot better. Even if, you have something coming up 2 months from now and you can't make it, or maybe that was you, Karen, if you decide to go to the community services one instead for one of our meetings or something. I think they only meet once a quarter, but I don't remember. But so I think a regular meeting is ideal. It does put a lot on you, Leanne, for all Thursdays.
So just
Nick,
to
why
point
did
out, if
did
we
you
did
ask me
second
for
and
this?
fourth Thursdays, it appears to me that if we have a deliverable by March, that we may only have a total of max of 5 meetings. Which
Who doesn't have that, Nick? Who does not have the second and fourth Thursdays?
That's the first question, I think.
I think that seems to be the good timing, or the best
I'm
we're
good with
probably
it.
going to do with a varying group like this. So I'm satisfied with writing those down. Just pointing out though, we may, based on discussions and content and agenda items, we may find ourselves having to put supplemental meetings somewhere in there if we find that we're getting up against the March deadline being asked of us, without a consensus document kind of moving forward. So
And will that be 6:30, Nick? Is that what you were suggesting, Jean Marie?
Yeah, it does matter to me the time. I was just thinking that probably makes the most sense from what I was gleaning from what people were saying.
Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I hear the deadline, and I really wish that we and hope that we meet it, of course. But I think we should all keep in mind that if our work isn't completed to our satisfaction, we may have to go a little further, that's all. I know there's provisions in the charge that allow us to extend beyond the date.
Duly
Right.
noted. Betsy.
And I was on the committee that drafted the charge, and I can tell you, Mike, that was definitely in the discussion. And we have precedent from other committees who, in good faith, worked towards deadlines and then came back to the council and said, we need X more time and this is why. So definitely, we should feel some pressure for moving forward to the deadline, but we also shouldn't feel like we have to turn in a product that we're not happy turning in because of a deadline.
Jean Marie.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how this would work with public meeting rules, but you could also assign so-called subcommittees to get certain things done and break up the work. I would assume they've got to be done publicly, so to speak, but that's easy enough to set up through Zoom. So that's something else. And I agree. I mean, if we can't get it done in March, great. But the reason for putting March on there is because what happens if you don't set a goal, then people just kind of drive all over the place. So I think it'll help just keep people on task.
Thanks, Jean Marie. Annalee.
So just one question. I hear some people on the committee might have some problems with time. Do we want to set a goal for the meeting will last 2 hours or 1.5 or about, so that they can have an ending time? So if they need a babysitter or whatever it is they need, do we need that?
I would say that you probably don't want to, at the planning board, we set a 10 p.m. We're not accepting any new business after 10 p.m. And that's, I think that's just a way, sometimes you get into meaty subjects, and I can see that happening here. So I would think some of that end timing might be helpful in the sense of keeping us also on task, trying to limit debate to meaningful interactions rather than, kind of all echoing the same thing over and over. Try to really get down to the meat and bones of it. Tom?
Yeah, I would recommend, for me, a 90-minute meeting is ideal. I think that's, you get people's attention. Clearly, if discussion warrants further extension, you can, but I think setting expectations is always helpful. Just speaking personally, and I'd recommend you consider that as a kind of an ongoing standing goal each meeting. Just with respect to the time frame, just appreciate that is ambitious. At the end of this, it does require voter approval. So that March date had everything to do with getting your work done, council to consider your recommendations and get it to the voters at the June primary. If that doesn't occur, that's certainly not the end of the world. We have future opportunities, certainly in November, perhaps even before that, if we're voting on school budgets multiple times. So that target had everything to do with just taking a shot at seeing if we can get this done to the voters in June.
Thanks. Alan.
I just had a question. I guess I might be jumping ahead, but my understanding is that we'd probably divide and conquer, and then during the meetings we'd discuss any questions that we had about what we were working on. Is that the way you envision it working, Nick?
Yeah, so I have I kind of mocked up some of my thoughts in type of a outline format, which is when you go through and review documents such as this, and I know there's some pretty experienced people here, you really gotta how far are we gonna go? So first of all, establishing those boundaries, but one, do you want to review alternate types of governmental operations? Do you want to see what other forms of government exist? Is that how far we're taking this? Or are we just going to focus on the review of what we have? Are we starting off saying that the current form of government we have is sufficient and we like it and we want to continue with it? And so that's, that's your first step, is where are we going? Because if you want to open up let's investigate other forms of government, municipal, local governments, then I think then you do fall into certain categories, which people can research X, Y, and Z, and then make a presentation to the board. Pros and cons of a town administrator style of government, a pro and con of an elected mayor's form of government. So those are things that you could, conceptually have people volunteer to research and present to the entire board for, a summarized discussion. Likewise, at the same time that something like that's going on, you can be having assigned duties and discussions regarding, my notes, a pro and con of what we're doing well in town and what maybe we think needs improvement in town. You can do those types of work simultaneously and then have those presentations be had at one meeting for the sake of helping facilitate discussion and movement. So I think a form like that, and almost in that subcommittee format, would actually serve us well here, considering how much we need to consider in a relatively short time frame. Betsy?
So Nick, not to contradict you, but I did want to share that, Jean Marie and I were on a committee that helped draft the charge, and we actually spoke with the town attorney a couple of different times. And I don't want to go into too much detail here, but this is a charter committee. If we were to want to make a major change, such as a change to the form of government, according to our town attorney, that would really require the impanelment of a charter commission. And a charter commission, the members are actually elected, not appointed. And it kind of makes sense. Again, I talked about the logic and the beauty of the overall process, is that if you were going to take on something so monumental as changing your form of government, then you probably, and I believe Falmouth recently did a charter commission for some reason. I can't remember why, but you would probably, want to elect the members of the charter commission. So we are a committee, and it's spelled out in the charter to review what we have in place. It doesn't mean we can't add anything new. They have added quite a few things, but the town attorney, and Tom, you can jump in here, said, we have a pretty wide latitude with this committee, but there is places in the state law, it's not cut and dry. There is a little bit of gray area there, but most attorneys agree that if you were to take on something as monumental as changing your style of government, you would probably need to impanel a commission, which we are not. So I wanted to add that in there because we spent quite a bit of time during the charge talking about the committee versus the commission.
I appreciate that, and that's helpful because as I was illustrating with that point, was how far are we taking this, and I think that needs to be, and that helps. That takes off a huge burden off of any type of investigative work that we need to be doing on the front end before we get to that decision making. So that's helpful, but it also, I was trying to illustrate the fact that I think we can divvy up, quote unquote, divvy up some of that work into different kind of subcommittees to have, a more focused review, and that's presented into the wider body for discussion and hopefully make quicker work of our charge. So, but I appreciate you clarifying that. Mr. Wood.
I'll get this mute unmute right. Sorry. Thank you, Nick. My thinking is that maybe as we all leave here tonight, maybe we can really pour over the charter if we haven't done so already, and come back at our next meeting and then share some of our thoughts and ideas as to what paragraphs, what areas, what improvements, deletions, additions, etc. And then maybe at that point, Nick, it might be a good idea, if you think it necessary, to divide the load, depending on what is discovered. I'm glad to hear too that we're staying a little bit more contained, because maybe it's given the state of affairs in our country. I'd like to just stay within that document and try to make the best improvements we can, as opposed to turn it upside down. But those are my thoughts on it.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think you're, to kind of broaden your point too, I think it'd be really valuable for us to talk to or ask the counselors to also submit some of their ideas to us. talk to some of the elected board members or appointed board members and elected board members to find out what they also think or have for suggestions, because these are the people that are, and even town staff, I would say, might even actually have some input here in the sense of what works really well and what doesn't. And I think that can help guide some of the areas we need to, look into a little further. So I think getting to your point, Mike, I think reaching out to different entities within the community and in the community in general is going to be a really important part of how we do this. Yeah. Tom?
I didn't want to belabor it. I just wanted to concur with Councillor Gleistein's comments there. The commission process is a totally different process. That's not what this is. This is a review committee. I believe your charge is limited to kind of the 4 quarters of the document, and implicit in that is the form of government that we have. Otherwise, certainly the council would have indicated, I think expressly, that was their interest in having you, dig that deep, if you will. So hopefully that will lighten your load and focus your attention. So I just wanted to concur that point.
Thanks. Mike?
A couple of questions, really. Obviously, the current charter has got 10 sections to it, 18 pages, and a whole bunch of sections within those. And I was just curious how that or any amendments that we propose are taken to the council and then appear on a ballot. Are they going to be ultimately voted amendment by amendment or as a whole?
More than likely, it would be amendment by amendment.
Okay. Not wanting to hog the floor while I've got it, but my second question really is communication between the committee. Should we be using the charter committee email address, or should we be using separate and private ones?
Depends the nature of the conversation. If it's committee work, I would encourage you to use the town email account, so we have a public record of that communication. But that's not to say that 2 of you can't have a conversation offline. That doesn't need to be a public proceeding.
Okay. And my third question really was in terms of, inviting friends, neighbors, significant people that we know around town that we know have opinions about these things. Should we be documenting where those thoughts come from for future reference?
I think they could do 2 things. You could encourage them to show up and offer their comments during public comment. That will be a standing item on every agenda. Otherwise, I view all of you as conduits of the community. And so I think it's entirely appropriate for you to bring those thoughts forward and attribute them as you wish.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
So to that point, I'm sorry, really quick. If somebody wants to send in an email to this group, what's the best way to do that? Send it to Tody and she'll get it out to the group, or what's the best way to do that, Tom?
We have set up a separate web page. I think we can probably also have a separate email or discrete email set up, and we can talk further whether you want staff to manage that or you want to see all of those communications as they come in. I'll talk to IT, but I'm certain we can set up a separate email address that folks could offer their communication through.
Okay, great. Because I feel sure some people prefer to do their communication in writing. So as long as they have a way to get us something fairly easily, as opposed to having to drop by and drop it off town hall.
Well, let's face it, most of these things can be fairly substantive, and so I think doing it by writing is going to be extremely helpful to understand the intent and the specific comment. So I'll report back, but I'm quite certain we'll be able to create a separate, distinct email address for this effort.
Thank you. So, I think part of what is going to be important here as we get started up, and we have clearly some administrative stuff in the background. One of which is going to be outreach. And can you either Tom or elaborate or Liam even, what type of outreach has been done to this point? Have we started to solicit the public for feedback on the charter? Has there been any notifications of that we're gathering information on this anywhere?
There's certainly been publicity around assembling this committee. Otherwise, you wouldn't have put your name in. I think there have been some basic news articles. I do expect that there'll be communications around the fact that this effort is starting up and how folks can plug into it if they wish. Liam, do you have anything further in that regard?
No, I mean, I think that that's been one of the questions that we discussed with the communications committee. Was that last night? Regarding what the communications plan would be, what the engagement plan might be. I think that, you know, to Tom's kind of point earlier, we have staff that I think are very capable about, you know, using our social media platforms to generate some of that interest and feedback and input. But I think we'd take on some level the cues from this committee as to what they're looking for. You know, we can certainly put together some ideas about, you know, set up we recently developed a form today or yesterday with staff that allows people to submit comments and questions to a few standing committees that's easily adaptable to this ad hoc committee. So that would be another mechanism for people to get those comments and questions and suggestions to the committee's attention.
You know, just thinking perhaps out loud here, maybe it would be beneficial if we, you know, submitted a kind of a letter to the editor for the Scarborough Leader, kind of, you know, outlining that the commission's been started. It's we're tasked with this. Visit a website. There's a web form for you to fill out with comments and suggestions, noting that we'd be reviewing them by the next scheduled meeting, which is, it's going to be on the 28th of January.
Mr. Chairman, let us set up the systems, whether it's discrete email address or how for folks to plug in. We have a standing spot in the Leader, in the no section in the Leader. So
yeah,
we'll certainly devote an article, and I'm certain we will, to this matter. I do see Leanne has her hand raised as well.
I was just going to ask Tom if we could use the town newsletter.
Sure.
That goes out on the 1st and the 15th, and that's another great way to get some information out and to keep the community informed of what's happening with the committee.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
yeah, the town council, I'm on the communications committee of the town council. We talked about this last night. And I believe that Councillor Anderson has something drafted up to go into the councillor corner regarding this in the downtown committee. And we were just waiting on that so-called email, whatever, just letting people know about the formation of these two committees, the importance of public input. But we're definitely, obviously, will help out with getting the word out, because that's part of what it's a very major part of what we do. So
I hate to be cynical, but my prediction is the average resident, you know, won't have much to say, and I hope I'm wrong about that. We need to provide every opportunity for folks to be involved as they can. And I guess further, my comment would be, it's not until you've got something substantive, and maybe you want to bring specific topics to the public that we're thinking of this or talking about that, as opposed to a wide open question about, hey, what would you like changed here? You may find yourselves as you dig into this that there's 2 or 3, you know, very substantive issues that you want to do a little more research on before you formulate your opinion. So that's where I suggest you might want to be very surgical, specific about inviting public comment when you've got a specific topic that you're looking to get further guidance on.
Thank you.
Procedurally, I just want to make sure, was your intent to have a vote or by consensus on the meeting time and dates, or are we past that?
I thought we had consensus on a date, 2nd and 4th Thursdays of the month.
Okay, I didn't want to assume that. That's what I heard, and I didn't hear objections. I just want to assume that that is the case.
What we did not decide, though, was the start date and the end time. I mean, start time and end time. And I would pitch 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Does that seem fair?
Flexible
Okay.
on the back end, firm at 6:30, flexible on the back end, but that's the expectation.
Target 8. Yep.
Yep. Great.
Okay.
Perfect.
And
In
then,
that regard, Tony, perhaps tomorrow, certainly by the end of the week, we'll send out those dates. I don't think it's terribly difficult to look at the calendar, what those dates are, but just so you have the discrete dates. And I'll be sending out Zoom invitations. I'm not sure if I'll do that, populate them all the way out, or we'll do it in the week prior to each of those meeting dates. We'll sort that out as we go forward.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the next, the fourth Thursday of the month is next Thursday, the 21st. So I was already looking at schedule. So just so you know.
I have that as I have this Thursday is the second Thursday of the month, and the 28th is the fourth Thursday.
Yeah.
Right. So the question is your next meeting the 28th?
Well, technically, the first Thursday was January 1st. That's why I was pointing that out. It does get a little screwy here. Or am I looking at the wrong year?
I think you might be on the wrong year.
You are.
Jesus, imagine that.
You're late for the meeting, looking at the wrong year.
I know, I'm friggin' losing it,
Get
man.
it together.
You really want to be in 2020 again?
No, hell no.
Annalee?
Yeah, a technical question, maybe
Oh,
who
good, that's
Liam
better.
or the managers of this. Somebody said that the meeting is posted under negotiations and something else. Is it going to be posted with the title of this committee, or is that where they will look?
That was on the agenda. It was wrong and it's been corrected since. It's
Oh,
been
okay.
posted correctly. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a,
Go back to Tom's question. My gut is to host our next meeting on the 28th of January. And I say that to give ourselves some time to really read, dive in, and then make our own comments as committee members and thoughts and ideas and suggestions, and have those hopefully available to the board for review and digestion at that meeting. If we could try to commit to, each other to have those comments available to this committee for review via email or something, maybe by the 26th, a couple days before the actual meeting. I think that's helpful to be able to review people's thoughts going into it. Does everyone think that works? So 2 weeks from today, we try to gather our thoughts in writing and submit them for others to review. So that way at the 28th meeting, we can kind of have an idea of sorting them and seeing how we're going to tackle them.
Yeah, and I might suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you don't necessarily need to have all the answers and to know what changes you want, but there may be a red circle, an area that you think you'd like to talk about. It may be premature to expect that you have the answer already.
I'll take comments and thoughts in any form we can get them. Liam.
Yeah, Nick, just a quick question. I think in the interim, I'd be happy to volunteer to be the kind of clearinghouse or the recipient of all the questions and comments, and then I can include those, either share those out to the committee prior to the 28th, or we can include those in the packet if they're all suitable to be discussed publicly or shown publicly. I think just from an organizational standpoint, do you want to try to organize them if to the degree we can by section or article, just so, as I can, consolidate those and compile them, there's some organization to it. I mean, there may be some general comments that are, stylistic or apply to multiple sections, but is that a suggestion that the committee's receptive to?
I think that's a good idea. It's very helpful. I see some head nods, so I think you're good on that. So we'll commit to send our thoughts to Liam, and he'll help organize all those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our agenda says here. Sorry, I'm pulling it up here. Review committee charge. I believe we've covered that. Agenda items. Tom, are you thinking agenda items because the item after that says set next agenda items? Are they kind of one and the same?
It is. I beg your pardon. It is.
Okay. So for next agenda items, I'll open that up for just discussion. I think we kind of tackled a little bit of it. love to see people's initial thoughts and comments. But as far as for next month's, for our next meeting's goals, I think having our personal committee thoughts synthesized by Liam with some review, and then I'd like to see maybe some, not necessarily subcommittees, but maybe some assignment of in-depth reviews of the personnel here. So somebody take section 1 and take the review comments and really look them into it. Somebody else takes section 2 and try to kind of share each section a little bit and then have some presentation. So work on that organizational side once we see what's coming in. Does that seem reasonable? Yeah. That's
good.
reasonable.
Hey, I have a quick question for Tom, I think. Tom, sometimes when you're doing these, there's the legal team has reviewed to say, hey, you need to clean this up or you need to clean that up. Are we expecting anything from the town attorney that would say, this state statute reference has changed, you should update that? So are we good on that? Or are we expecting anything from the town attorney?
Yeah, we've not charged them with doing a review for that purpose, but I think that's certainly appropriate at some point. I'm not aware of any glaring inconsistencies, but I can pose that question. Our attorney is a municipal law expert, so I think he would be aware of potential conflicts pretty easily and cheaply, I'll say.
And we could wait more towards the end when we have more things that they could also review.
Right.
So that way, that way then, because I wouldn't think those would be very controversial, anything that they would bring forward. So.
No. Nick, I might suggest that if folks are able to kind of collect their thoughts, come forward, share them with Liam to the extent they can, and spend your time at your next meeting, which could be a lengthy one, is to really kind of understand them and just categorize them. I think my expectation is you'll see some themes emerge, that there'll be a handful of sections in particular that rise to the top, and then you can talk about how to tackle those.
Yeah, and that's probably going to be pretty meaty, as you've stated.
Yep.
Mike, Mr. Wood.
He's got it. No,
No, you're muted.
you're muted.
There you go.
I'm used to teams. Give me teams. Thanks, Nick. Liam, can you share your email? I'm chatting with you, but I guess you're not seeing it. So I know where to send that stuff.
We'll send a follow-up email to all of you with instructions and contact information. How's that?
Okay, that's good too, I guess. Yep. And yeah, thanks, Nick. I also just wanted to say that I too would like to see the whole, review the whole document, at least be free and forward my thoughts on the whole document as opposed to being restricted to any number of sections at this point anyway.
Sure. Mary, did I see your hand up at one point?
She's frozen.
Mary is frozen.
Okay. Any other thoughts as we go into trying to formulate the next agenda?
Yep.
Oh, Mary, is you back?
Can you hear me now without the video? Does that work?
Yeah, it's choppy, but give it a go.
Can you hear? Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm just cut out my video because sometimes it works better.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Well, I just wanted to, I think Betsy had mentioned that I agree that I think it'd be really great to look at other towns' chart. Okay, you can hear me. So I was just saying that I think, it's part of that idea of having subcommittees. I think it would be great to have, one group maybe looking at some of the charters from other towns. I think Betsy had mentioned about that, and I would agree that would be something that would be really useful for us to, when we look at our own charter to review that. So.
And I think that's something that would be great to submit along to Liam, because I think, as Thomas pointed out, we might find that's an emerging theme, which is, what do other towns do? Might be a question that some of us are, contemplating as we go through this process. And I think if there's definitely enough momentum behind that, then yeah, maybe it's worthwhile to dedicate, a couple of people to kind of investigate that a little further.
I really encourage that. I think what you'll find, I'm showing my bias, but this charter is a mature document. I think it's very thorough and comprehensive. And the best way to validate that is look at other ones, for sure.
Alan.
When I found out I was going to be on the committee, I went ahead and took a look at some other town charters, and they essentially looked about the same. One exception I found was Ogunquit, which had a prohibition against gambling. That was in their town charters. I thought that was interesting. Otherwise, most town charters were in essentially similar.
We had a horse racing track. I don't think that would.
I know, right? Exactly. But maybe not any longer.
Okay, so I think we have a good feel of what we need from us heading into the next meeting and what we can expect for agenda at the next meeting. I'll also work with Alan and Tom and Liam to help develop the next agenda offline. We'll figure out what that next agenda needs to look like in form, and then make sure, of course, we get it posted publicly through the town's efforts that their typical postings for that.
Right. We will endeavor to get meeting materials out, at least agendas and Zoom links, the Friday preceding your meeting. So almost a week before. To the extent we can, we'll provide meeting materials as well, but oftentimes those straggle along. But that's our expectation, our intent.
Great. So is there any other business that this committee thinks we should bring up for this evening? Or do you think we've hit the 8 p.m. mark? Not to rush us, but that's the hour and a half. Alan.
I just have one more question. Nick, obviously we're going to have to talk some. Do you prefer to discuss things by email or by phone, just to kind of get on the same page?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd rather go by phone, but it doesn't.
Okay, that's fine. Is there a group email with everyone's emails on there? Do you know?
We've protected your private emails unless you want us to share those.
Okay. You can share mine.
Do you mind? Do we have permission to share them with all of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm okay.
Okay, we'll do that. We're not going to make them publicly available. That's the difference. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair. And Alan, I'm even bold enough these days to meet for coffee. So
okay.
You let me know.
Okay.
You let me know if that's also up your alley.
Okay.
But yeah, be happy to talk, and we can try to figure out how we tackle this bear.
All right. I'll initially email you, and then we can figure it out.
Great. Well, with that, I think I would entertain a motion to adjourn unless somebody else wants to throw something out there.
So nice to see everybody's face, and I would move to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All right. Any discussion? I'll roll call it. Mike Stevenson. Alan Foster. Karen Shoup. Richard Silkman.
Yep.
Leanne. Oh, no, sorry, Leanne. Liam Gallagher. I'm sorry, not you either. Allison Bristol. I'm trying to go down the list here. Allison Bristol.
Yes.
Annalee Rosenblatt.
Yes.
Mary Starr. And Mike Wood.
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. I showed that as unanimous. I appreciate everyone's time this evening. I know the town's grateful and the people will be grateful. I look forward to this.
Thank you, everyone.